The caucus regular meeting of the mayor and council of the Borough of Lavallette for Tuesday, January 19, 2021 will come to order. Please call the roll.
Councilman Borowski?
Here.
Councilman Lamb?
Here.
Council President Dalen?
Here.
Councilman Stossel?
Here.
Councilman Finter?
Here.
Councilman Phillips?
Here.
Please read the Open Public Meetings Act statement.
Due to the coronavirus pandemic, this meeting has been closed to the public physically and is being live streamed via Zoom. Any comments from the public that are received via email no later than 4 p.m. by the municipal clerk will be read and discussed by mayor and council at the council meeting during public comment period. Notice of this remote meeting is posted on our website with instructions on how the public will connect live to this council.
Thank you all. I'm going to read the Zoom disclosure statement that I typically do at every meeting. During the public comment parts of the meeting, if you'd like to speak, please click the raise your hand button and we will be notified of your request to talk. The mayor will recognize you and your microphone will be unmuted to allow you to speak. Once you have completed speaking, your mic will be remuted. For security reasons, we cannot recognize anyone who is listed as anonymous or a phone number that is not identified. When you are recognized and unmuted, you must first state your name and address before saying any comments or asking any questions. Failure to do so may result in you being muted and or disconnected. On computers, the raise hand button can be found in the webinar controls section, typically at the bottom of the screen. If you raise your hand by accident, please feel free to lower your hand. If you are only joining by dialing in, you can simply dial *9 and toggle between raise hand and lower hand. On mobile device, the raise hand and lower hand buttons are typically found in the lower left corner of the screen. YouTube meeting. This meeting will also be live streamed on YouTube. There is roughly a 20-second delay in the process. YouTube chat will no longer be used for public commenting. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask for a moment of silence. We did have one local resident by the name of Jerry Zager from Westmont Avenue passed away. He was worked in the medical industries and he summered here for a long time with his parents on President Avenue. Was a neighbor of Miss Anita before he moved here full-time from Bridgewater. So I ask that you keep Jerry in your thoughts during a moment of silence, after which I will ask Mr. Yes. Doris Simpson passed away. Art's mom.
98 years old.
98 years old. She was on the highway next to Iceberg. That was her house at Iceberg.
Yeah.
The owners now live in there.
Oh,
Doris
Art
Simpson.
Simpson's mom.
Art Simpson's mom, and Art passed away last year.
Oh.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll keep Doris in our thoughts as well. Thank you for that, Michael. After that, I'm going to ask Councilman Finter to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right. I want to welcome everyone to the first regular meeting of 2021. The agenda is not a whole many pages, not too long, but there is one very important topic on here tonight, and is the public hearing on Verizon Wireless's application for 5G installations here in the borough. We did have a large request to have that meeting in person, but at the advice of council, we determined that we could not do that. So I am expecting quite a few comments from the public tonight. Verizon will be online here with us as well. So because of that, I'm going to keep my comments short to keep the meeting as short as possible.
Mhm.
So we have reports: construction, zoning, municipal court, police overtime. Mrs. Philippone, do you have reports for us today?
I do. I'm looking, I have construction in front of me now, I can't find it. Let me start with municipal court. The construction report was online. Let me start there. Construction for December 2020, 55 permits issued, 2 permits updated, revenue generated 30,709. less 1711 for the DCA, giving us a net revenue of 28,998. That breaks down to 12,963 building, 7,515 electric, 3,805 plumbing, 3,915 mechanical, and 800 fire. 100 building permits, 53 electric, 48 plumbing, 14 mechanical, 9 fire, 4 certificates of occupancy, and 19 certificates of approval. 1 notice was given. The court report, is that next court? Or?
Joy, before you move on to that, can you tell us how that compares to previous years, the construction?
I don't think I have the total for the year, but we, at the height of the storm, or right after the storm, we were in the $80,000 to $90,000 per month. When things settled down, we settled around 55 for almost a whole year. Then we backed down to in the maybe mid 30s. And last year, if there were a few months, I think it was last year, the time flies and we're stuck. So it could have been the end of the year before. We were down below 20,000. We've picked up into the low to mid 30s again, and we've been holding steady. This is at least the 3rd or 4th month over 30,000. So we're doing well. I will ask Mr. Brin for a yearly report so that I can give you the totals, because that was just for the month of December, but not for the year.
All right, can you give us a year-end total at some point, just to kind of compare?
I will.
It's, it seems like there's a lot of construction going on out there. It's important to note that for all that construction, we're talking new ratables, which is going to help us keep our tax rates down again in 2021. Thank you.
I have municipal court, total of 11 tickets given. They're all traffic moving violations. And that's the first December report for last year. Last year, our total revenue for 2020 was $57,260.66. That's the revenue to the borough. That represents a deficit of $9,278.14. Considering that we really haven't had court and things are, a lot of people are staying home, there's not a lot of people, it's not as bad as I anticipated. We had a lot of summer monies, if I recall correctly. So that's pretty much what happened. And we'll move on from there, see what goes on. The police report overtime, hold on, for December. Okay, December 2020, this is a whopper, 333 hours of overtime as compared to 132 hours from the year before. That's up 201 hours. I think that's pretty obvious when we did have some COVID-related absenteeism in the police department and quarantines.
Plus the shifts or they have one day off a week too, just like some of the other employees, right? So they have an extra COVID day, and those days have to be covered also, right?
I'm not sure about that.
There's a code.
They don't create overtime.
No?
No, they're on recall now.
Okay.
You got the utility construction going on, so the streets there.
Yeah, do we count that in there?
No, I don't think that's.
I don't think that's counted because it's paid for by the utilities.
Yeah, I mean, when you put we haven't had a month this bad ever in my
It's got to be the COVID.
recollection. I don't think we've ever had 300 hours in 1 month. It took us from a negative, less overtime in 2019 or 2020 to we're over by 56 hours, which is not too bad considering. I mean, I'm aware of several different individuals within the police department that certainly had to quarantine, if not beyond that. So it's not unanticipated either. And I think we did well because we were so low with 330 hours. We're still only 56.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a pretty good job for the other 11 months, that's for sure. Okay, is that it, Mrs. Phillips?
That's it. That's all that I have.
Bob, you have a public works report?
The acting superintendent, Ted Galbowski, was feeling under the weather. He had his COVID shot, so he wasn't feeling well for a couple of days after he's had that. So he gave me a call.
Did he?
Yeah, but
He
he's
had a
good.
shot.
I mean, he just had the shot. It was a reaction to the shot, so he wasn't feeling that well. But I did have a conversation with him. We talked about the pickleball courts and the various surfaces, and we're still looking into it. I mean, I know that the plastic surfaces weren't, didn't seem to be what the pickleball players wanted.
Yeah.
The resurfacing, to go complete resurfacing, we're talking like $230,000. I mean, that's the numbers we're seeing. So then we looked at these membranes. I had Brian Walsh actually take a look at a court in Medford, and he said it was a mess. And after only a few years, you start seeing the weeds start growing through them and all that. So they're a problem. Just to do some small resurfacing work, there's one guy that said he could fix the cracks, and sometimes they last, sometimes they don't. That's about $30,000 that guy wanted in order just to repair what was already there. But the one thing that Ted hasn't looked at yet would be a Schedule C from the county, where they do all the paving work. Then we have somebody come in and resurface. The resurfacing again would be probably, still $100,000 maybe to do that. So we're talking a lot of money, but we're still looking into it. And one thing he's going to check out is the Schedule C. The other thing that Ted mentioned is that we're still waiting, I guess, the results for well 3. Bob, okay. Also, there were some areas there where they were looking at where the sump pumps, that was suspected that it was going into the sewer. That has been corrected. If it doesn't go in the sewer now, we have some complaints of it being in the street, as you well know. So that's being done. And also the commercial accounts on the electric, we're almost done with that. There's a few stores there that to get the meters put into the store areas. So that looks like about it.
All right, very good. Thank you, Bob. Okay, we also have public affairs. Anita.
While we're talking about the police, you're going to be getting a request for donations to help the police department. And I read the letter and I was really very impressed. I hope everybody reads it carefully. There's a lot more they do besides protecting us. They have been supporting organizations like the Special Olympics, Where Angels Play Foundation, Toys for Tots every year. They helped at the provided championship jackets for the Lavalette Elementary School athletic programs. They give college scholarships to our students graduating from high school. So they really do a lot. And I want to make sure you get this to your son, because I know he's involved with that. And I think it's wonderful. And also I want to mention the person that passed away, Jerry Zegar. He was very sick. He had cancer and he was very sick. But he had asked for a plaque on a bench on President Avenue because his mother and father lived there. And that's how he was introduced to Lavalette, by coming down in the summers when he was young. And the plaques weren't ready to go on yet. So I just made one call to Bob. I made one call to both Bobs, and I made a call to Ted. And within a week, maybe less than that, that plaque went on right away. And Jerry spent time walking up there and just sitting on the bench and crying. So I'm glad he had that before he died. So thank you. I also want to let you know that I'm sorry to have to cancel all the trips, the New York City bus trips, the ski trips, all the fun things, but that's all right. We'll take them up next year. We'll take them up. But I am also working on a grant from the Ocean County. I'm working on getting something to help with our pickleball open space grant. Monmouth County gives them, and I'm in touch with the county to see if they can come up with a grant that they can help anybody who has open spaces in Ocean County apply for something and get some monies towards that. So I'm working on that still. I want you to
Persistent.
Yeah, to help you persistent. Also, I read this interesting thing that I don't know if you'll get to read it, but Dave and I represented the council on the Lavalette Business Association. And this was such a nice paragraph. It came from Rebecca Malloy on the business. And she says, in closing, I think it's so important to say I cannot think of a better town and a group of businesses to have faced this crazy time with.
We came together in the spring and summer like no other town. We supported one another, helped each other out as much as we could, and came out stronger than ever, in my opinion. Cheers to 221, and fingers crossed for an amazing summer season, which I thought was well said. Just wanted to share that with you. Okay.
Thank you, Anita. All right, we have the tax account report for December of 2020 and the revenue transaction report for November of 2020. I will need a motion to accept the reports.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Borowski?
Yes.
Councilman Bilton?
Yes.
Council President Taylor?
Yes.
Councilman Stockton?
Yes.
Councilman Finger?
Yes.
Councilman Lynch?
Yes.
That motion is approved. Items on consent, only two tonight. Number 55, authorizes the mayor to sign and execute the interlocal shared services agreement between the Borough of Lavallette and the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office to participate in Move Over law enforcement program. And number 55A, authorizing the proposal of services from O'Donnell Stanton and Associates for the rehabilitation of potable water supply well number 3 at an amount of $24,000. Now, Mr. Bryce, that's strictly the engineering fees, correct?
Yes, Mayor, it's estimated the cost of the project, once they get the bid out, could be in the area of $170,000. This is just for engineering fees, but it's engineering fees from design, bid, construction, and final inspection.
And this kind of mirrors the other well that we did last year. Are these fees relatively in line with those as well?
A little higher. That one was projected to be, I believe, 140. It came in around 120. There is some significant work that needs to be done in the top end of this well compared to that well.
What are we going to do about financing that? Are we looking at a USDA loan or we're just going to use our bands?
We're looking to ban it at this point based upon the rates of the bans.
And we have some surplus in the water budget coming up in 21 that might help?
Minimal.
Okay.
Okay, we can
Needs to be
postpone it
done.
Because we have the pickleball.
No, pickleball water, let me think.
Pickleball. That's easy.
Okay, any comments on the consent agenda from council?
I wanted to ask if I can add one more resolution. If not this meeting, maybe at the next meeting. I called up Elaine Jardine to congratulate her. She's once again our ADA person. And she asked if her husband, Pete Jardine, could be put on that committee.
He's on it.
Oh, he is. Oh, okay.
All right,
Good. Thank you.
very good. Any other comments on the consent agenda? If not, I will ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
And the roll call, please.
Councilman Borowski?
Yes.
Councilman Bilton?
Yes.
Council President Taylor?
Yes.
Councilman Stockton?
Yes.
Councilman Finger?
Yes.
Councilman Lynch?
Yes.
And that motion is approved. Approvals of resolutions off consent, we have number 56, which is the bills list, the amount of $2,748,711.78.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Borowski?
Yes.
Councilman Bilton?
Yes.
Council President Taylor?
Yes.
Councilman Stockton?
Yes.
Councilman Finger?
Yes.
Councilman Lynch?
Yes.
And that motion is approved as well. On to the public hearing on Verizon wireless application. Mr. Bryce, you want to explain how this is going to work?
Yes, Mayor. Tonight we have from Verizon, Mr. Gregory Meese, the attorney representing Verizon. Waiting to see him appear on the screen.
And he'll give us a presentation and then we'll open it to public comment.
Yeah, along with Mr. Meese, you'll have experts from Verizon in the fields of construction, design, as well as radio frequency expert.
And council is free to question them at will.
Yes, they'll probably make a small presentation, and then you can go ahead and ask the questions. We will probably have to also read the questions that came in to the clerk. We'll have to pose those questions to the Verizon experts to be answered as well. And then we'll open it up to the public to comment and ask questions as well at the end.
Thank you. Verizon, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bryce. If we could have the following individuals' video. Oh, I got two of them already. And no, we got all three. We're good to go. Tonight, we're doing a follow-up to the planning board meeting of January 6th. And we have received the planning board's memorandum with its recommendations to the council. And we're here tonight to answer any questions that the council has with respect to the Verizon proposal. We have Anthony Rakusik, and Mr. Rakusik is the engineer who prepared the plans that have been submitted. Brian Grivis, Mr. Grivis is a radio frequency engineer, and he's filling in for Andrew Peterson, who testified before the planning board with respect to radio frequency compliance issues. And last, Anthony Egidio. And Mr. Egidio is a Verizon network field engineer to answer any specific questions that the council may have with respect to the installations in the field. With respect to the planning board recommendations, we have no objections to the recommendations that they made on each of the sites, other than with respect to the requests for radio frequency emission monitoring devices. Rather than that, what Verizon proposes to do is to have training sessions with the DPW and Lavalette Electric employees to teach them about the installations and significantly about how to turn off the electric to the installation, so that if any of your workers are working on the pole, they know how to turn it off and there would be no emissions to worry about. Well, two other issues with respect to the installations. All five comply with the Lavalette ordinance, but the planning board had recommended that two of the facilities, one on Liggett Road, one on Brown Avenue, be looked at for possible alternative locations. Verizon is willing to work with the borough to do that, with the understanding that the two proposals that Verizon has submitted were going to be at existing pole locations. And if they were to move, they were going to need a new pole set somewhere in that close vicinity. I know that Mr. Egidio had spoken to Mr. Bryce with respect to possible locations. But again, we're willing to work with the borough to find locations that the borough may find more acceptable than the one that was proposed on Liggett Road and one on Brown Avenue. And with that, I'm not exactly sure how the council wants us to proceed, whether you want us to review any of the plans, the photo simulations, or the radio frequency report. We're happy to do that in detail, or one at a time, however the council would like to do that.
Sure that the council has reviewed the material that's been supplied by the planning board. We all received the packet over the weekend. Jim, do you have specific questions or comments you'd like to make tonight?
I'd like to hear the presentation in terms of,
Do you want to hear it from each of those experts?
can we get a general overview of what these, how the technology works compared to the 4G that's out there? How are these nodes going to enhance what we currently have in Lavalette?
All right, maybe best if we take one node and kind of dive down deep on one. Let the council see what the components are. We'll discuss how they function, how they will improve the network. So we'll go through that, and then if there's questions on any of the other nodes, we're happy to then move on to them. Does that make sense?
It makes very much sense.
All right, why don't we start then with the first one that was on the planning board's memo. That was 2000 Grand Central.
Yeah, 2000 Grand Central Avenue.
And Mr. Rakusik, are you allowed to share your screen?
Yes, I'll share it right now.
And while you're setting that up, you just explain your relationship to the application and how these plans prepared by your office.
Yes, I work for Share Design Group. Worked there for about 6 years. We prepare the drawings for the small cell sites for Lavalette. This one is Lavalette, labeled Lavalette 01. It's at 2000 Grand Central Ave. It's at the corner of Route 35 and Jersey City Ave. You can zoom in there. This is a drawing of the plan view. So here's the pole. This is the corner of the road with the sidewalk. This is just a closer up explaining the equipment, calling out what's going to be installed. On the next page, you get a more clear view of the existing pole, showing the existing communication cables that are there and what we plan to install. What we plan to install is a electric meter, a load center, which is like a power panel, and that would travel, the electric would travel up to the antennas within a U-guard, and we would also install a junction box that would hold cables that would allow the technicians to update the antennas from the ground. All the equipment on the pole will be painted to match. And then I also have the compliance box here. It shows that we comply with all standards that were set forth in the code. Next is the signage, antenna specs, the antenna mount itself, the power panel up close. This is the power panel layout and the route of the fiber. This is a grounding diagram. It just shows that the ground wire comes from the antennas down in the U-guard and then into the ground using ground rods. This is just a general wiring diagram, and that would be all for the site.
And Mr. Costa, do you have a photo simulation of that site also you could share?
I do. So once again, this is the plan view of the location, the poles here at the corner of the street, and then these arrows depict the following views within this packet. So this is the first view, the second view, and the third view. The first view, this is the existing conditions with the communications cables on the pole. This is what it would look like after the installation. You have your meter, panel, U-guards going up the pole, and your antennas within the concealment. This is another view with the existing conditions, and then proposed view showing the same equipment. The final view showing the existing conditions and then the proposed layout.
And Mr. Costa, you had proposed that the antenna, the cable and everything to be painted to blend in with the color of the pole. And one of the conditions of the planning board was that color chips be provided prior to installation, just to confirm that the particular pole and the facilities would have a compatible color. Is that right?
Yes.
And Mayor and members of the council, that's an acceptable condition with respect to sharing the color chips in advance to make sure that the colors will do a good job of blending the facility in with the pole. Are there any questions of Mr. Kosick before we move on to Mr. Grievous?
Yes, I have one. Regarding page 6, the diagram that shows the grounding. The grounding
Yes.
rods are 6 feet apart from each other.
Correct.
We didn't get into this with the planning board, but how far will they be? Will they be totally recessed into the ground, or will they be sticking up somewhat from the concrete?
No, they'll be totally recessed. You guys can still see my screen, right? This is grade
Yes.
here. So the
Yes.
top of the ground. This is the top of the ground, and then they'll be 2 feet below.
Okay. What will the impact be on the concrete? Will you have to drill into that, or will you have to saw cut it to get the wire in there as well? The grounding.
I typically believe they saw cut and then patch. But Tony, you could speak to that if I misspoke.
If you could let us know too, how do they repatch it? With what material?
I think Mr. Egidio may be muted still.
Okay, we're working on it. Okay, he should be good now. Mr. Egidio?
Yep, I'm good. Yes, what Anthony says is correct. We saw cut and then we patch it up. So it looks pretty much the same as it did before.
You use concrete to patch it?
Yeah, they try to use whatever's existing there, so they try to match the concrete that's existing. So it would just be the same as if, say a car hit one of the poles and knocked it over, and if they had to put in the same spot, they would try to replace the concrete with something similar, so it doesn't look any different than it did before.
So it'll be two like core drill holes and then a saw cut line, a 6-foot line from hole to hole where the cable would go in. That would be covered with concrete.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I have a question as well.
Please feel free to jump in at any point.
Yes, could you explain the extra weight that might be at the top of the pole, existing or replacement poles, and how that extra weight would be adversely affected by the wind? I see from your applications that you used something like 39.5-mile-an-hour winds. The speed of the wind that we experience is considerably greater than 39.5 miles an hour. 60, 70 is fairly common. And if you have a storm, it's even more than that. Now, I know I looked at several applications and the 39.5 mile per hour winds are consistent throughout the applications, but we're going to have this big thing at the top of the pole, which you don't currently have. So when the wind comes, what impact would that extra weight have on the wind velocity concerns?
That's a question for Mr. McCusick because he had prepared structural analysis on each of these facilities that were supplied. So if you could.
The structural analyses were calculated per the code for the area. So that's what the standard would be. And that's why 39 was used there.
I don't believe we have a code that covers small cell antennas because we don't have any of them. So how would you have a code? Our poles, according to your applications, are tested for 39.5 miles an hour wind. But what you're doing to our poles and what you're doing to the poles that you would also install yourself is different than an existing pole. Our poles have wires. You're going to put a node. There's extra weight at the very top of the pole. So what impact will the wind have on that extra weight at the very top of the pole?
So the poles were calced using the National Electric Safety Code, which is for poles. And so what we do is we take into account the wind going at the top of the pole. And what essentially happens is it creates a moment arm, and the embedment at the base of the pole needs to be such that it will not overturn. And that was all taken into account. And with the 6-foot embedment depth, it was found to pass.
And in terms of the weight, how would that differ, or maybe even the wind load, how would that differ from, say, a transformer that's up on a pole?
We don't have transformers at the very top of the pole. At the end of the pole at the top, they're down the pole a bit. Most of them are down quite a bit, not all of them, but some, they're not all at the top of the pole. And I mean, I have no way to compare the weight of a transformer to this a small cell node. I don't know, I don't know your equipment, and I don't think anybody does. How can you write a code to cover something that you don't know anything about?
The code is based on the wind load itself, not the equipment. So we take into account the wind on the equipment. I cannot say how it compares to a transformer because I've not calced the transformer.
If Verizon has similar installations, Mr. McCusick, in other shore communities, such as Asbury Park?
Yes. Yeah, we've done this similar calc in Long Beach Island, Sea Isle, Asbury Park. I believe we're working in Belmar as well. Multiple areas.
With similar installations?
Yes.
And they're all covered by the same national code?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been installed in a lot of these towns for upwards of a year now, and we've had some pretty heavy winds, and none of the nodes that are currently installed have been affected at all.
And they're all 35-foot poles? And they're all
Yeah.
class 4 or poles, not 2s or 3s?
Yeah, some of these are actually a bit taller, 39, 40 foot,
Okay.
42 feet. Yeah, that's correct.
And the class of the pole is a 4, like you're offering to us?
Same thing.
Yes, well, so if the structural analysis of the existing pole were to have failed, then we would have recommended a pole replacement. So in this case, this particular pole passed based on the National Electric Safety Code calculations. But again, there's plenty of cases where it's determined that the pole isn't able to withstand the wind load and the capability, so they replace the pole. So we do that plenty of times as well.
Council, any other questions? I have a few if the council does not. Does Verizon have plans for any additional nodes beyond the ones that are applied for currently?
Yeah, we have 5 more that we're looking to hopefully get in front of council in the next few months. We decided to start with these 5 because they're all existing. The next 5 are a bit more complicated. There are a couple new poles that we're proposing, and then there's a couple on the either electric or JCP&L poles. So we do have 5 more, and then in the future, we probably might need another 10 or so down the road to cover the rest of the town, especially more by the beach. Right now, what we're proposing is to try to help out the capacity offload on the downtown, well, not downtown, but the shops and the restaurants and whatever there. 35, but RF is looking to add a few more towards the beach because you guys get double your traffic in the summer months at the beach. So that's what we're looking. So we're looking around, hopefully looking to do 10 this year and maybe 10 next year would be our goal, and then go from there. But I don't see there much.
So you believe that 20 will be needed in order to satisfy the requirements of Verizon. Do you share those antennas with any of the other companies that intend to branch out into 5G?
Good question. No, we don't. So every carrier has their own antennas and their own frequencies that the antenna's on. So each pole that we're proposing is our own pole. Now, I know this question has come up in many towns. Can another carrier use the same pole? The answer is no, based on what the previous member said, that these poles are not structurally capable of handling 2 carriers and the load of 2 carriers. However, if something the town can do is when if another carrier comes along and tries to do the same thing, you can use the same poles and have them replace the pole again with a bigger, thicker pole that could handle a second carrier. Those are available, but they're again a little bit more ugly, I guess you can say, and a little thicker, a little taller. So that's the solution. But no, these are meant for just us.
So if there were 4 other carriers seeking to install these, and they'd be looking at 20 per, we'd be looking at 100 nodes installed within the borough of Lavallette.
We say yes.
Yeah, again, you can limit that, but yeah, there's 3 carriers, Sprint and T-Mobile merged, so they won't be utilizing a 4th one. I know, so if that is the case, then again, you can utilize the new poles we're proposing near the beach and such. You can make them a 2 carrier pole and kind of save the amount of poles by going that way. I know that's currently being utilized in like Wildwood. They have 2 carrier poles down there, so it is something that is being done.
Thank you. Mr. Bryce brought to my attention last week or this week that the Department of Defense had issued a report that questions whether or not the signals emitted by these 5G antennas would interfere with flight operations. As you may know, we are in a direct flight path to McGuire Air Force Base or Joint Base McGuire, and they fly fuel tankers in and out of there continuously. Do you have any intentions of addressing those concerns with the Department of Defense, or what are your thoughts on that topic?
I'm not sure if that's maybe if Mr. Grievous is aware of that concern, whether he can address that or not.
Yes, typically, and I don't know the exact range. I'm trying to look that up now between McGuire Air Force Base and Lavalette. But typically, the frequency range we're talking about will be mitigated or will die off by the time it reaches any significant distance, which will just be part of the noise floor or less, at a distance to where the airport would be or where a plane would be approaching. Because these devices are only up to 40 feet off the ground, so that should not present any type of fear or concern to an aircraft.
Did you read that report from the Department of Defense?
I did not. No, I did not read it. I'm speaking in general. The millimeter waves that this 5G network's operating on, typically, those signals die out relatively very quickly, much more so than your typical 4G or less frequencies.
So you're suggesting that the Department of Defense's objections are not grounded in any solid science?
I'm not saying they don't have a concern. I'm saying the distance from which we are to the airport, for these small cells and the power at which they operate, I would not think it would be a concern.
The concern is with the planes flying over the top of us that they apparently some of the electronics that they have on board, which detect their elevation off the ground, are interfered with and could result in crashes. With fuel tankers here, it's one of their largest concern is with these larger aircraft carrying thousands and thousands of obviously highly flammable aircraft fuel.
Mayor, we also have constant helicopters flying very low up and down the coast. We've had FBI drone activity, especially the potential bombing in Seaside Park after that a couple of years back. They used drones to try to locate it. So all of those things, according to that Defense Department concern, have to do with the altimeter on the planes that sort of sends the distance from the ground calculations into tailspins. So the pilot, or whatever you call them, they don't know where they are. They don't know if they're 50 feet off the ground or 500 feet off the ground. So
Mr. Graves, do you have access to that report? Would you like Mr. Bryce to forward that report to you?
I think it'd be a good idea just to make sure we're talking about the same report that we can address.
Yes, please.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can get that to you right away. Mrs. Filipponi,
One
Anita?
question. I just wanted to ask, how many towns in this area do you have this going on, and what has been your experience with it?
Great question. So currently, unfortunately, I can't speak for Monmouth County, but I know for Ocean County, we are currently in talks with Seaside Heights, Seaside Park, Manahawkin. We have currently about 100 nodes on air, which is in service in Long Beach Island. We have another 10 on air in Ocean City. We have some in 40 or so in Atlantic City. We have 20 or so in Margate City. We have another 15 to 20 in Sea Isle City. We have agreements in Upper Township, which is also Strathmere, and we have an agreement with Cape May Point currently. So it's a lot of short time. We're trying to cover the entire beach up and down the shore. We have, Belmar, is another one we have, and Asbury Park is another one. So far, there really has been nothing but no issues at all with anybody. Some, residents like yourselves is a little worried, but there really has been no issues so far. And in Philadelphia, we have 600 or so on air. Hoboken, we have 100 or so on air. Jersey City, Newark, they're all coming. So I know you guys are more worried about the shore towns. So yeah, for the shore, Ocean City and all those, we haven't had any complaints so far. Delaware Shore, we have nodes in Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach, Fenwick, Bethany Beach. So again, we're really trying to hit the offload capacity for shore towns that younger people take up a lot of data. And as phones increase and the amount of what you can do on the phone increases, the amount of data that's being used up by the younger generation is really draining the capacity for everyone else and making it harder and harder to make calls and use the internet. So it also helps the businesses who rely on it as well. So right now, yeah, we have it all up and down the shore, and we hope to continue to do so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Council, have any other questions or comments before I open the floor to public? Jim, you said you had a list.
Can I come back there? Maybe some questions will be asked by the public.
Okay.
Mayor, are we going to have an opportunity to make statements before we vote?
I will allow that.
Okay.
Why were these 5 sites selected initially?
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially we went out looking for 10. It's actually it's harder to pick out polls than you would think. There's a lot that goes into it. 75% of the polls are really not usable. We try to avoid homes. We try to avoid blocking people's views of the beach and all that. So basically, we were trying to look for areas where there was traffic, either foot traffic or car traffic or shops or stores that needed capacity offload help. And then we were trying to offload for number 4, node number 4, which is the second node, the Leggett Road. We were trying to offload that island. So basically that was it. That's why we chose these 5. We try to use existing poles where possible, especially in accordance with your ordinance. And then, like I said, in the future, we're trying to look more towards the beach and offload the capacity over there. So the first 5, and the other reason we chose these first 5, but these poles are owned by Verizon Telecom or Telephone. So they're this is kind of the same company, and they are easier to get an agreement with than I know like Lava Electric would be and new poles. So we're just basically the low hanging fruit on the first 5 as far as pole placement.
So when these 5 get constructed, is that 5G? Is 5G even operating now?
Yes. Yeah. This is 5G. This is 5G millimeter wave. This is the 5G that everyone is talking about. Yes, this will be those 5. Yes.
And could for a layperson, could you explain how those nodes, transmit the data from a phone? And do you require a 5G phone in order for this to be more efficient for the end user?
I can, but I'm going to let Brian talk about that because he's the expert.
So in order to take advantage of the 5G technology, yes, you do have to have a 5G phone. If you do have a 5G phone and you're using the 5G service, you are therefore not using 4G service at that moment. So that there then offloads the 4G service to be more available to those still on 4G. I'm not sure what the total market penetration is of 5G phones at this point, but most of the new stuff coming out is all 5G. And then, there's still a large percentage of non-5G devices out there. So the 5G will benefit both parties, one because they have the technology to use it, and the other because it helps to offload the existing technology for the other users.
So those without a 5G phone will only see the additional benefit because someone with a 5G phone is no longer operating on their 4G network.
That is correct, yes.
Are you currently operating any 5G equipment in the borough of Lavallette now from the water tower?
No. We have a, what's called, 5G NR, which is just, it's like a 4G, 4.5G technology. So it's faster than 4G, but it's not the 5G speeds that we're talking about right now.
So if I were to have a 5G phone and I made that call and it goes, the signal would go to your node, then how does it, what's the mechanics behind it from there?
That's for you, Brian.
Okay. So typically what happens is anytime you have what's called the air interface and then the backbone of the network. So the air interface is between your cellular device and the tower, the small cell, whatever the antenna is. And then that is typically fiber connected or somehow connected back to a central switch that then connects into the internet, if you will. And that's how your data is routed.
So each node has to be connected with fiber optic cable to that central switching station?
Typically, it could be fiber optics, it could be coax, it could be another wireless backhaul method, but typically, I believe they're mostly fiber.
What do you anticipate to use here in Lavallette?
It's all fiber. We have Verizon fiber in Lavallette, so we can utilize that. So all the nodes we're proposing will be fiber, and it'll run back to a Verizon hub.
Where's that hub located?
I don't know the exact address, but I believe we do have one in Lavallette, but I don't know. That's a different part of Verizon, so I'm not quite sure. You can get that answer to you though.
And from there, how is that? So my call now is going to this central clearinghouse. Now how does it go to California? Does that?
At that point, it's typically taking the same routes that a typical landline phone call would take. It has to go across switches, then across backbone networks that traverse the country, and then back to a central switching office or a local switching office, on the far end, and then back out through their links, either through a landline. So there's a switch in the middle that will connect you to another landline, or will connect you, to another cellular device. It really depends what it is, but it's either going to be switched to a landline or back to a cellular network to go on a cellular call.
When the 5G was originally proposed to the borough, the original presenter talked about other features and services that would become available through 5G. Can you tell us about those and when they would become available, if ever, here in Lavallette?
So I'm sorry, Tony, did you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
No, go ahead. You got it. You can start.
Okay. So as we get into 5G, as you know, there's a lot more video calling and things of that nature that are going on now. So 5G is going to help with delivery of socially distanced communications and video conference based activities. It's going to allow for more data and pretty much all the services you have now, but enhanced. More and more people are streaming. More and more people are relying solely on their phones as their method to get their internet, make their phone calls, etc. So it's things like that. It's also going to just allow more data connectivity and greater bandwidth for the general technology used now, as well as what's down the pike.
There was originally some discussion about it replacing or competing with cable TV for entertainment. Is that in the realm of possibility here?
Yes. So it is capable of, streaming very high quality video to a home, to multiple users in a home, things of that nature. So it does have that capability.
When would that be available?
I would say that if you have a 5G device, it would be available right away, because it's just a matter of you streaming it over your phone and using your phone cellular network, as opposed to you streaming it through your home internet connection.
So would you have a device that would then allow home TVs to view this rather than just a telephone?
I'm not aware of the roadmap for all the types of devices on the network, but none that I'm aware of. Right now, I'm just aware of 5G cellular telephone type devices or a modem, but not specifically something for your TV or to replace your cable box per se.
Yeah, theoretically, in the future, there would be a booster that you'd have in your house if the 5G is available that would boost the signal into your house, and then that would negate the need for cable and internet in your own house. But again, we're not there yet, so it's really hard to know. And until we start building some of these out and seeing how they work and getting enough of them, we don't want to promise anything, but that is what we're striving for, is to be able to penetrate houses and get a booster in there, and you can get rid of your existing internet. I know you guys have internet problems down there in Lavalette, so in your homes and your cable, so I'm sure that would help. But right now, we don't want to promise anything until we see how it works. That's cool.
Have you heard of this local Internet of Things company that's attempting to put these small transmitters in people's homes? Do you tell me how they relate to what 5G is?
Yeah, I mean, my guess would be that's a booster using existing 5G signal, and then just spreading into homes to alleviate the need for cable. But that's not our company right now, so we can only speak about what Verizon's doing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council?
Is there any other means of delivering 5G? Is there any other technology out there other than the small cell nodes?
No, because they're so like Brian was saying, they're so limited on how far they can go. Right now, this is the best way of deploying it. We do have, like you guys talking about the water tank there, and we are on that water tank, and it's doing a great job of covering the area, but it's too tall to use the 5G, and the same thing. All the existing rooftops, for the most part, would be too tall as well. So this is our best bet for now, as with the technology that we have.
Jim, you good? You got more? You want to save them for later?
I'm just trying to understand why you wouldn't try to complete the installation. Why wouldn't, I mean, he said 5, then there's 10. How many are going to be required to fully cover?
He said 20, and it's confusing to me in that they're going to have to go before the planning board again for another 5 and then for another 10. It seems, why didn't they do 20 initially? Is there any reason why you're doing it in phases rather than applying for all 20 at one time?
Yeah, so to be honest, we were just trying to get the first 5 through. I know previously a lot of people in Lavalette did have a problem with what we were doing. So we tried to pick some locations that we thought were in good spots that were on existing poles to go back in front of you just to get in the door basically, and then go from there. I would love to just say, here's all 20 and we want to go, but I have a feeling you'd have a lot harder conversation selling that to the townspeople. So we're just trying to start with 5 and go from there. 3 of the 5 seem to be approved, and even 2 of the 5, the town is asking us to move locations, right? And those are existing poles. So if we came with 20, you might ask us to move 16 of those 20. So we're just trying to get in there, get the first 5 going, show you the benefits of the 5. And then I'd love to work with the town on, where would you like us to put them? What works for you? Where can we go? Is there streets that we should stay off of? Is there corners you don't want us at? We can show you where we need to be, and then you could help us pick the locations a little bit better. But these 5 we thought were perfect. Existing Verizon telephone poles. Some had to be replaced because they're too short or weren't structurally sound. But that's why we went with the first 5, just to kind of get the foot in the door and then go from there.
So as the technology evolves, the antenna itself is going to change in design. Would we be able to have you change out to the more aesthetically pleasing designs as they come up, or at least the next 5 or the next 10 after that, to get a more aesthetically pleasing as they become available, or are we stuck with what you want to sell us?
Well, we're already putting them inside the shroud, like Anthony showed. So we actually have upgraded a bit. They've already gotten a bit better, but they're already, Anthony, if you want to bring that up on the screen again, they're already inside a box, so they're hidden. I don't know what much more we can really do to hide them other than it's already, you're not going to see the antennas. You'll see a shroud, which is basically a covering. Go back. Yeah, so you'll see that, which all 3 of the antennas are inside there.
Well, we've seen some renderings from a third-party provider that had like sculptured poles to support these things rather than just a telephone pole.
Sure. Yeah. The problem there though is, so what we're trying to do again is use existing poles and just replace them. If that's something the town would want, then yeah, we would need to place new poles. So it's the balance of, does the town want us using existing poles, which is what your ordinance says, or does the town want us to propose some fancy structures that, like the third party provider is showing you? So, we're willing to work with you. Again, those poles that you're talking about are thicker, taller. With the antennas inside, RF, the 5G RF it's not like a 4G flagpole. These 5G antennas don't penetrate as well. So you have to use RF friendly material to do these poles. So again, they're a little bit, like I said, a little bit thicker. And, again, if that's something that the town wants for the next batch or for the new poles we're proposing, we'd be willing to do so. But again, we were trying to use existing poles for now to be, to keep the aesthetics of the town.
Okay, Jim, you have more?
Is the fiber optic that connects the nodes to the base of the main office, is that the same fiber optic cable that in Tom's River and Ocean Beach they carry the FiOS signal on?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming. Unfortunately, we're Verizon Wireless, so I can't really. The answer is yes. If you're going to ask me why there's not FiOS in Levelet, I can't answer that. That's VZT, which is it's part of Verizon, but it's the unionized part that handles fiber and FiOS. So I just can't answer that. I don't know why they haven't built out into Levelet, and I don't. Yeah.
When we were talking about putting these on a Verizon pole, Verizon seemed to be one big happy family. Now it's that's not us.
Yeah, well, and we still, we still have to pay, even though we're the same company. We still pay Verizon to use their poles, even though they're not. We are the same company, and they don't give us any preferential treatment. So, for example, if AT&T came along and put an application on a pole, and then we came along a day later and tried to put the same application, they would tell us no, and that AT&T was there first. That is what they're regulated to do. So yeah, we are the same company, but we have to follow they have to follow the guidelines of a cable provider, and they can't show preferential treatment. So yeah, that's basically it.
So AT&T comes in, they can't go on their poles, but they can look for other ones.
No.
Yeah.
No. Saying if AT&T put an application onto a VZT pole, a Verizon telephone pole, and then a day later we put an application in on the same pole, they would tell us no because AT&T was there first. So what I'm saying is, even though we're all one tech happy family, we don't get any preferential treatment because we're Verizon. All the other carriers get the same advantage we get. Yeah.
I appreciate you clearing that up.
You good?
Yeah, for now.
Okay, at this point then, if there are no further questions from any member of council, we'll accept comments before the vote. But at this time, I'd like to open the floor to public comments. Could you recognize her, please?
Oops, that's not going to work. Sorry. Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello, Marlene. How are you?
Happy New Year, Mayor. Happy New Year, everyone. We miss you very much.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
That's right. I didn't think Chris was going to move the little slide thing, so I'm on camera. Verizon, it's not lost on us at all that you made this application on the 25th of November, which was the day before Thanksgiving. So if you're trying to do something kind to the community. You don't do it when, first of all, people are leaving for the holidays, and then it's the middle of a pandemic, and then it's winter. So that's not been lost on any of us. Lavalette has fewer than 1,900 people. Our average age is, well, I'm going to be 60 this year, so if that gives you any indication. So we're really not all that concerned with the summer residents 2 weeks of the year down the shore. Now, what I haven't heard you say is anything about these 5G cell towers that create excessive noise 24/7. And it's due to the cooling fans needed to cool the lithium-ion batteries that are located on the utility pole. My husband and I, who's a retired pilot, we've looked around, we've been to Lakewood, we've been to various places. No one's talked about the excessive noise. Second thing, the lithium-ion batteries are combustible. And in California, where my husband is from, we've certainly seen what has happened with the PG&E poles that have broken out in fire, started multiple wildfires. No one's talked about that. And then the other thing is the industry research has shown that cell towers negatively affect property values by about 20%. No one wants this thing outside their house. That's why the people certainly living on West Point Island on Liggett did not want any part of this. So I haven't heard that. And then aesthetically, these, although they're called small cells, they carry almost refrigerator size equipment. And it hangs off the side of the utility pole. And that's not to mention the antenna. So the antenna that makes these poles so unwieldy. And then the weather, as Councilwoman Philippone noted, we have incredible winds down here. So 39 and a half per mile hour winds. Chris, how often have we had 70-mile-per-hour winds? Quite frequently. And then I know we're not allowed to discuss this, but what's very, very concerning to the people here is this technology has never been tested for human safety. Senator Blumenthal had a hearing the beginning of February 2019, and your wireless executives all had to concede that there has never been independent studies that prove that this is safe. And in fact, in 2018, we know that the National Toxicology Program found that rats at least got tumors and special types of cancers that were not found in the heart and other places. So we're not convinced. I'm not going to speak for every Lavalette resident. As I said, there are about 1,900 of us, but I'm probably talking for 1,800 of us. So thank you.
If we could just respond to Ms. Chamberlain's questions,
Absolutely.
because
So,
the planning board did ask
let me
some
go
of
from-
these.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So the Thanksgiving, that was purely, I promise you, purely coincidental. That was Thanksgiving. We were just trying to get the applications in. It had nothing to do with trying to sneak it in during the holidays. I promise you that. That didn't even cross my mind. The refrigerator size equipment you're speaking of is not on these applications. Those are for 4G poles. We do not need that big cabinet, and that's part of the reason we eliminated 4G from these designs, because they don't really work in shore towns. The biggest box on there is only 17 inches, so it's not even close to what you're thinking on the refrigerator side.
And
As far
again,
as the cooling,
Mr. Ginny, on that, we go back to Mr. Rakosik's photo simulation to show that there are no large cabinetry on these facilities at all. Everything's attached to the pole, and if you can you pull that up again,
Yep, working on it.
just to confirm that?
so for 4G, you need a cabinet that goes inside the box that she was referring to, Marlene was referring to. However, for 5G, you don't need that box. So that negates. You see, yeah. So at the bottom there, you see two small. You want to zoom in there, Anthony, a little bit? Yeah, zoom in a little bit. So you just need two. You need a fiber box, a meter, and a junction box. And like I said, those are 17 inches tops.
And Mr. Rakosik, could you also address the question on noise?
The noise, I believe this installation does not need fans. Is that correct, Tony?
Correct. There's no cooling fans on these.
And
There's no
no
Marlene,
cooling.
no.
No No devices that would cause noise, correct?
Correct. And in Long Beach Island, we made us do an extensive study on the noise, and we passed all tests with flying colors, and that was what allowed them let them to allow us to deploy. So yeah, the noise has been a factor that we've proven is not an issue.
Matt, do we have someone else with a question? Okay, you want to bring them up, please? We'll get them to identify themselves.
Unmute. Hello?
Hello?
Hi. This is, I'm Marge LeVault. My husband, Greg Scarcella, we live at 3 Liggett Road. Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
We can
Okay?
hear you wonderfully,
Okay,
as
great.
can Verizon.
Okay, that's important. Okay, don't touch anything. Okay, we strongly oppose Verizon's plan to install their small cell rate RF radiation nodes on our poles in Lavalette. We feel that if these are installed, they will be an eyesore, as they will be seen throughout the town, obstructing water views for which we pay taxes. They will create an increased risk of loss of privacy, which can affect businesses, our local government, and our citizens. They will have an environmental impact, as RF waves will affect seabirds, perhaps nesting on poles, migrating birds, and insects, including bees. There is also a significant health concern, since there are no long-term studies that can ensure their safety. And they can jeopardize our property values, as poles are erected close to private residences. Citizens, including us, do not want a pole in front of their home. As someone mentioned earlier, Verizon is doing this during COVID, when summer residents are perhaps when summer residents are perhaps unaware of what's going on in our town. Also, many are unfamiliar with Zoom. Case in point, one of our neighbors, older individuals, cannot maneuver the Zoom situation and are not here. They cannot be present here and voice their comments. And we feel that this gives Verizon an unfair advantage. What? So now, we also are not exactly sure how 5G technology will improve our cellular service. We feel that our demographics, which somebody just quoted as only 1,800 citizens in the town, and the average age over 60, whatever. And that's, we have a very small population for 10 months a year. We don't even feel that 5G is necessary. Okay, you did just admit that you're planning to put these perhaps 20 poles into our town. We feel and object to the fact that they would be exposing us to constant increasing RF emissions. We object to being exposed to these waves on a 24-hour basis on our citizens, and particularly on our children and grandchildren. And most important, we are a tranquil seaside community. Our residents and visitors enjoy the safe and neighborly setting. We really can't allow this to threaten our quality of life and lessen the appeal of our beautiful Lavalette. When I was checking the website today, there was the heading, Lavalette, we are the ideal seaside resort. We want to keep it that way. Thank you.
Verizon, care to make any comments in response? You're welcome to do
Yes, you would. With respect to the radio frequency emissions, I know the council has seen the reports that were submitted to confirm that the emissions would be well within the FCC limits. But we didn't talk about that tonight, so maybe we can just have Mr. Grievous just talk about how these facilities are very low powered. The reports were done in a conservative manner. And notwithstanding the fact that the town is preempted from getting into this issue, we have Mr. Grievous to answer questions because we knew that this was a concern of some of the residents, just like we had Mr. Peterson before the planning board. And hopefully a little bit of knowledge will help to assuage some of the concerns that your residents have. So Mr. Grievous, you just briefly summarize the findings of the analysis of these facilities with respect to the emissions.
Sure. And just to make a statement in general. So the radio frequency has been studied for many, many years. There's been a lot of studies done by the government, by private entities. Just because this frequency range has been used before doesn't mean it hasn't been studied. What happens is the FCC Office of Engineering and Technology defines standards for what are called safe maximum permissible exposure rates for various frequencies. The difference between the 28 gigahertz we're looking at here and maybe say the 2.7 megahertz or the 2700 megahertz or 1900 megahertz or 800 megahertz that we're talking about in existing technology, it's just a matter of frequency. So the same physics apply. However, the higher you go in frequency, the quicker that signal dies off and becomes just what we call background noise. Not noise you can actually hear, just thermal noise in the environment. It's just what they refer to as Gaussian noise. It's not something. It's very low power at that point. It's not something that it's a concern. It already exists, and it just goes into the mix, if you will. But at this higher frequency, the power declines very rapidly. And just to give you an idea, so the FCC Office of Engineering Technology has guidelines that we analyzed, and for these specific installations, we would be approximately at any time we would not be more than I believe in this case 80% to 90% of the maximum permissible exposure rated for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And those calculations to reach those levels are very conservative. Those calculations involve things like the radio waves bouncing off the ground and being completely in phase with the radio waves that are coming out of the antenna at the same time, such as to cause constructive interference that would actually double the power that one could absorb if they were walking by the site within its usable distance. Also, it's assumed that the site would be operating at maximum power, which these sites are generally designed to operate at the lowest possible power they need to in order to not cause any unnecessary noise. And again, that's the noise that you don't hear. It's just noise that's on the RF spectrum for other devices to use. So it's within the best interest to always be operating at the lowest possible power. And again, even when you're at maximum power, even when you have signals in phase, reflected signals in phase, you're still not going to get, in this case, above 90% of what the maximum exposable or permissible exposure is. And again, that's for the entire population, taking into account both the far extreme of the population that would be considered extra sensitive maybe to radio waves, as opposed to a more general type of population that's less sensitive. It takes into account 100% of the population when looking at what are safe levels.
Mr. Gravis, if you don't mind, you're talking about variable power output. Do these things vary during the day by themselves, or you tune them to the location and you set them and forget them?
No, they operate on power control. So when a device is talking to it, it tells the device how loud it needs to talk, literally, like, okay, it tells it with every transmission, it's telling it to step up or step down power, depending on in that exact moment, if there's too much background noise, or if another user is trying to operate at the same time, or there's other phone users around, things like that. The link between the cell tower and the phone, the cell tower is telling the phone, okay, back down a little bit, bump up a little bit, back down. And at the same time, the phone is also telling the tower what level of power it's seeing from and how good the receive signal is from the tower, and telling the tower to, dial back or dial up power as well.
So then theoretically, at 3 o'clock in the morning, when that tower's not seeing any activity, it could theoretically not be putting out any radio waves?
Correct. It will be putting out less because it still has to put out, we'll call it its beacon, so that, users know it's there and that they can connect to it. But yes, it's significantly less than what we're putting out, say at 5 o'clock, rush hour.
So during peak summer hours, we're going to see more activity and more output than we would in the dead of winter around here.
Correct. Yes.
How about the amounts? You're talking about having another 20 or nodes placed around town. How would that affect the same conversation we're talking about as far as the amount of output?
So the range on these devices is very short compared to your average tower. So it's somewhere in the 500 to 1500 foot range from the installation itself. So if you have one that's further down the road, the power has rolled off so much by that point that it's not really playing into the next site, and they're designed so that the power rolls off by the time it gets to the next site, so it's not interfering with its transmissions with users connected to that particular site.
Okay.
Just a
any other-
question, if I could, to follow up on that. You said the range is about 500 to 1500 feet. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding or misinterpreting. You said getting them closer to the beach. So if that range is 500 to 1500 feet, well, why would you want to go closer to the beach area itself within town when you're losing all of that eastern side? Wouldn't it be more apt to go closer to, say, 35 for argument's sake than the beach itself?
Mainly because at this frequency, these sites are very much line of sight. Like typical cell tower operating at lower frequencies has a lot of reflections and refractions that the signal can still be intelligible as it goes through other mediums and goes through a building and so forth. With 5G, that's not the case. With 5G, it's pretty much directly line of sight. If you have to go through, even a pane of glass at this frequency severely degrades the signal to the point where a lot of times if you want, you might have to use a coupler or like a little coupling antenna to get the signal through the glass. So that's why these need to be positioned closely, to the beach area.
Thank you.
Yeah, Route 35 is also, almost all the poles on that road are primary power poles, which we can't use. And you can't put new poles in the same power line right away as the existing utility poles. So we're really limited on what we can do on 35. So by putting them on the beach, you're getting the residents and short traffic walking to and from their cars, and you get people, going up to the beach and everything else. So and you'll still get some offload on the beach as well.
Okay, Matt, the next question, please.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you for conducting this hearing. And I join with the previous speakers from the citizens of Lavalette and all the points that they brought up. I also highly recommend that all citizens spend some time bringing their attention to the article which fully articulates the issues in the aerospace, national airspace system presently, and the dangers that are being posed by 5G to all aircraft that utilize radar altimeters. And so this includes all, I presume, all military aircraft, virtually, as far as I know, all civilian aircraft, commercial civilian aircraft, and many small aircraft. So the article, for people's references, in Defense News, and it can be accessed defensenews.com. It's 21 December 2020. So this is not even a month ago. And the head of the FAA has asked the FCC to pause the auction of all these frequencies because the FAA has not had adequate time to evaluate this. And that's under the advice of the Radio Technical Commission for Aeronautics, which is an 85-year-old trade group that advises the government about these type of technical issues. So nothing that the FCC has done that I'm aware of has studied any of the effects that 5G has on aircraft. And Councilwoman Philippone correctly points out that we have low-flying helicopters routinely going up and down the beach here in low visibility. These are Coast Guard helicopters that are trying to accomplish their mission. They need their radar altimeters in order to safely navigate that low altitude airspace. And this is just, I was unaware myself, even though I'm a recently retired airline pilot with 38,000 hours, over 38,000 hours. I was unaware that the FAA was not at all involved, nor was the industry involved in determining whether these 5G transmissions would cause a possible dangerous condition. So the danger to Lavalette is that we would not want an aircraft accident resulting in our town as part of this unnecessary and fast movement to deploy these devices. So I'm adamantly against having these devices presented here in Lavalette. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your comments. Verizon want to respond at all?
Just to respond
Yes,
to, we just responded
yeah,
to the report that you're citing. Let's be honest about what it says. And there's a line right in the article that says the FCC in turn has said its own technical studies show little to no risk involved, and it tends to continue with the auction of the spectrum. So, a concern was raised, and I think that the industry has always said any of these concerns should be researched. The health concerns have been researched now for going on 80 years, I think. They will continue to be researched. They should be continue to be researched. But that none of this is a conclusion yet. These are concerns that should be researched. And apparently from this article that you've cited to us tonight, the FCC has conducted technical studies that show little to no concern.
Yeah, the other thing I read in the article that it states that the frequency range from 3.7 to 3.98 is the range that poses major risk, and that is not our frequency range. We do not have improvements in that range, so we are 2.4, right? I believe, right, Brian? So that's not the 3.7 to 3.98 would not be us.
So what we're proposing tonight is high band 5G. This is mid band 5G, which is not in the same realm, and there's not an interference issue there. So
Next question.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Ann Gear. My husband and I are both residents on 104 Brown, which is pretty close to the proximity of where a proposed pole will be. My question, first of all, for the council is, do you know of any zoning with the ADA in regards to pole placement for people with hypersensitivity? That's my first question. Second question, the safety of the Lavalette electricians and the other people on the other poles on our street. If anything would ever happen to any of those workers who are not Verizon workers, union or non-union, who would be responsible for their injury and their recovery? And the other question is, who is responsible if someone runs into one of the 5G poles and has injury and or surrounding area would have injury? Those are my three questions.
Mr. George, you have any information with regard to her first question that she addressed to the council was with regard to ADA accessibility in the pole locations?
Mayor, we've looked into the issue of the ADA compliance or requirements, or are they subject to the ADA? And generally, we would have to say that the ADA is not a restriction as to these particular applications. What we've learned is that in the First Circuit, there was actually an appeal of a refusal to accommodate a person who claimed what's called EHS syndrome, or electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome. And the court rejected it as there was not enough scientific evidence to support that being a recognized disability. That doesn't mean that times could change, or a different kind of application could be addressed where it's not on poles or something. But as for right now, we don't find that the ADA is a restriction as to these 5 applications for public pole siting.
Thank you, Mr. George. I think the other 2 questions were directed at Verizon with regard to liability with accidents.
Yeah, like any other pole. If a car hits a pole, the question becomes who is at fault? The driver of the car, somebody else? So it's, there's no special standards or rules here. It's general negligence standards would apply.
You satisfied with your answers? You have further questions? You got a couple seconds left here.
Okay, I
Mary
mean,
Ann?
okay, hi, yeah, the only thing I would say is, I would just hope there would be an alternate area rather than such a small little street like Brown Avenue. I know if you have a plan to put many of these up, maybe they're just going to be on every block of all 20 blocks. I'm not sure. But I definitely have some concerns of the overall aesthetic and, home values for all of us in Lavalette right now. And that's my main concern.
Thank
and
you for
safety
expressing
for
your
all the
concerns.
workers. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank
Thank
you, Verizon experts.
Matt, next
And she did ask about the electrician. We are going to have a training session with Lavalette Electric just to show them how to use our disconnect switch and just generally how the system works and what they can do to shut off the power in an emergency.
Thank you. I did hear those comments earlier. Matt, we have another question?
Yes, next hand up was Robert Berg.
Robert, how are you?
Good evening. Robert Berg. I'm a friend of Barbara Cicino and some of the other members of the Lavalette group. I'm also an attorney. Mr. Meese has seriously misled the council when he says that you cannot consider the health effects of these antennae. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, And under the Telecom Act of 1986, in fact, you actually are required to make this equipment ADA accessible. The mayor a few minutes ago spoke about this First Circuit case. Unfortunately, respectfully, Mayor, your understanding of that decision is not correct. There was a challenge in that case that the ADA was preempted by the Telecom Act. It is not. The district court ruled that it was not preempted. That case did not succeed for the plaintiffs because on summary judgment, the court found that the evidence that was adduced for the summary judgment motion was not sufficient to raise an issue of fact. Just what happened there is the experts didn't prove the case. There was no ruling as a matter of law that the ADA did not apply. And in fact, the ruling of law in the district court case, which was not overturned on appeal, was that the ADA does in fact apply. And in fact, the Telecom Act of 1996 requires compliance with the ADA. And in fact, the FCC never has regulated questions of ADA accessibility in terms of the standards. So the FCC has a standard that says if the equipment meets this standard, you can't challenge it under the Telecom Act. That does not apply to ADA cases. So if you have a hypersensitivity to electromagnetic radiation, or you have cancer and or immunocompromised, you can seek reasonable accommodation under the ADA from Verizon and from the council who has to approve the application here and make sure. You have to consider the health impacts on the individuals seeking reasonable accommodation under the AD, under both the Telecom Act of 1996 and the ADA. So you have in your community a lot of older people who have cancer, they're cancer survivors, they do have these medical conditions, they're immunocompromised, implanted medical devices, which are all affected by this equipment. And you have this equipment that's 20, 30, 40 feet from their houses, blasting this radiation every day. And you have to take into account those health concerns when you consider the placement of these poles. Additionally, have you gotten any, will Verizon agree to take out an insurance policy if these people have medical injuries that can be proven as caused by their equipment? Are they going to issue a policy on behalf of the village, of the community? No, they can't even get insurance because no insurer in the world will give them insurance for personal injuries claims because they don't want to go bankrupt like in the asbestos cases. Will Verizon give you an indemnification agreement, agreeing to pay any judgments against the community, the council, for any injuries its residents sustains? No, they won't do that either. So I think you really have to take these concerns into account in your decision tonight. Thank you.
I just respond to Mr. Berg. The Telecom Act is pretty clear that no state or local governmental entity can regulate the placement of these facilities based upon the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions. That's section 332C7B4 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. The New Jersey Supreme Court has upheld that, or has found that to be preemptive in Smart SMR versus Fairlawn. That's found at 152 NJ 309. It's a 1998 decision. And that's also been found by the US Supreme Court to be preemptive on state and local governments in T-Mobile South versus City of Roswell. And that's a US Supreme Court decision in 2015. What Verizon has done here, it has followed the FCC guidelines. It has submitted a compliance report on each of the proposed nodes and has demonstrated that each of the nodes are well within the FCC standards. Once Verizon has done that, this board loses the jurisdiction to discuss that in any fashion under all relevant case law.
Can I speak?
I'm going to make a comment first, Mr. Berg, as well. Initially, you said that my interpretation of the applicability of the act, I rely upon Mr. George for his analysis of the case law. I don't do it on my own.
Okay, I'd love to speak to Mr. George and educate him. While the municipality may not be able to change the, prohibit the placement with respect to equipment that complies with respect to particular poles and their placement with respect to particular individuals who have medical conditions and sensitivity who are seeking reasonable accommodation under the ADA. The council certainly has the ability and is not preempted. And that's exactly what this Fay case up in the First Circuit so held.
Any further comment from Verizon on that?
We disagree.
Okay, oh, go ahead.
We disagree with Mr. Berg's interpretation of the law.
All right, thank you. All right, no comments from council, then we'll move on to the next hand, please, Matt.
How you doing? My name's Skylar Streich. I'm here with Barbara Sassino. I'm on her Zoom account. I addressed a question to the planning board last meeting that has not been answered. You say there's a need to take the stress off the network, Verizon, in the summer months. That's your need for installing these 5G nodes. So during the other 10 months, I'm asking the council too, is there a way to maybe decrease the power output or decrease, or maybe even shut off the network when it's not needed to take the stress off the increased summer tourism that's putting the stress on the network? That's my first question. And my second is the fact that you will not provide, when you first came on and you said you will not provide RF meters to the utility workers of Lavalette. My question is, first, why? Is it due to costs? Number two is, if they don't have RF meters, how would they be aware that there is an error in the, let's say, corrosion that could cause a leaking malfunction of the RF emissions? How could they be aware that it would need to be shut off in the first place? You're going to train them on shutting off the poles, but why would they be aware that it needed to be shut off in the first place if they have no meters to see that it is malfunctioning or being, the emissions have been exceeding what allowable standards? Those are my questions, and I'd like them answered this time because I didn't get the first one answered the first time, at least. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Verizon. It's your ball.
I'll answer the one question with respect to the meters. In the FCC small cell water, which is referenced right in the Lavalette ordinance, the FCC made very clear that there could be no quid pro quos, that the carrier can't come in and offer something in exchange for access to the right of way, other than what was stated in the order. And a lot of towns ask a lot of different things, and the FCC made it very clear that the carriers can't be complying with those requests, and the municipalities really shouldn't be making those requests. So rather than addressing it in that fashion, what Verizon thinks it's able to do and is willing to do here is to train the necessary personnel as to how to shut a switch off. With respect to any leakage, I would throw that back to the expert. Perhaps we can get a response as to whether or not, from Mr. Grievous, whether or not the facility even is capable of exceeding the limits, unless there's someone actually climbing a pole.
So, if there are an equipment malfunction from that standpoint, I mean, the device is designed to operate at its, is where the amplifier is operating at its maximum possible output that it can generate. It couldn't go into some scenario where it's putting out some vastly greater amount of power from a malfunction. And if it were malfunctioning in any case, these devices are monitored, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day through a central NOC. So, a technician would typically be dispatched in a very timely fashion if it were malfunctioning. But for it to malfunction in a way that it's putting off, significantly more, greater amounts of power is highly improbable. But it is monitored even for any type of malfunction in that regard, in which Verizon would roll a technician within a day or so, I'd say, to fix it, because when you have a device that's not operating correctly, it's knocking other users off the air, and therefore they want to fix that. You know, it can get people back online.
I just have one comment. The corrosion on waterfront, I didn't know the beach was a realm of possibilities that you would install. We have extreme salt damage to many, many metallic things, including marine grade steel that rusts. I'd like to know what this is made out of, but also I'd like my question answered, if I am a limit in time, the second question about why we need these operative in 10 months out of the year.
Because in those 10 months out of the year, the network's under strain for capacity because of for the 2 months out of the year, you have, the amount of traffic going through the network at that point is extremely higher. And typically these networks are built for the worst case scenario so that they're continually reliable. People use their cell phones, exclusively anymore. On top of having a landline phone, let alone being, maybe in a possible vacational rental scenario, they're going to be relying on their cell phone more to be able to get to emergency services or call 911. So it's important that the capacity be there to support those additional users in those 2 months of the year. And the remaining months of the year, it still brings, greater bandwidth and availability to the existing residents that are there those other 10 months as well.
So it's not a need, it's a desire. I mean, the 2 months I understand for 911 calls, you're saying, if we get jammed up lines, but the other 10 months is just for, I mean, if the residents took a poll, I don't think they would care about the increased streaming capabilities, but for our specific town.
Skylar, your comments about reduced power during the 10-month period, I was kind of alluding to those earlier in my discussions with Verizon. And I intend to explore that a little bit more, but it sounds like, they do reduce their power automatically when they're experiencing less activity. So we're not going to see that peak power. I'm not trying to defend them. Make sure you understand that. But it is an interesting concept. Maybe they can turn them off.
Okay. And just real quick, what are these nodes made out of? Is it like is it a steel? Is it, what is the material? I'm just curious.
Speaking of the antenna.
Well, yeah, I guess the antenna, since they house where the, RF emissions are coming from and where it could cause significant failure. I think that's the relevant part of this.
So typically the radome of the antenna is made of a fiberglass material or some RF friendly material. The metal parts of the antenna are inside. And they're protected from the salt and any salt fog or anything of that nature, as is the rest of the equipment. I don't believe there's any jumpers or anything in this case where you would have coax or connectors exposed. And even if you did, they would be completely wrapped in electrical tape and foam tape to completely seal them from the air and the water intrusion.
Okay. Yeah, I have Anderson Renewal Windows. They backed it and they said they will never fail, and they failed on oceanfront. So just so you know, things that work somewhere else don't really work here. It's extreme environments. But okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Skylar, for your comments. Next hand. We'll get her up and get her to identify herself.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Hi, Michelle. You got to give us more identification. Your full name and address, please.
Hi, yeah, my name's Michelle Fojon. I'm the owner of 103 Brown Avenue. And I just found out yesterday about this telephone pole that'll be going up about 20 feet from my children's bedroom. My husband and I, we live in Fairlawn, New Jersey with my 3 children and my elderly mother-in-law who has Alzheimer's. So we don't get to Lavalette as often as we would like. but we do stay there over the summer. And it's very upsetting that I happened to pop down there last night and my neighbor told me about this pole. And I haven't even had time to think about it. But right off the top of my head, it is a health concern, no matter what anybody says. It's a humongous pole that will be 25 feet from my children's bedroom. And aesthetically, it will bring down the value of my property. I'm almost positive of that. So I guess my question is to please reconsider locating the pole at 103 Brown Avenue. Please to reconsider that. And my second question is, how were the owners, the residents in Lavalette supposed to be contacted about this? I'm not sure who that's a question for, Verizon or the town, but I'm sure, you know, it's not right for me to find this out last night from my neighbor. Thank God I made a day trip down there yesterday.
Michelle, this Verizon 5G has been a topic of discussion here by the council, I think, for nearly 2 years. We keep the public posted as to progress with the application on our website. There was a meeting of the planning board that was advertised as well. So we've done everything that we can to try to make the residents and property owners aware of what's going on, but we don't call every person in town, every homeowner.
A letter would have been nice, because like I said, I have 3 children right now. I live in Bergen County, and for 10 months out of the year, I'm searching for colleges. I'm searching for high schools. I'm looking at nursing homes. I work full time. My husband works full time, so I don't go on the website. A letter or something would have been nice. Although, in your defense, this did pop up over Thanksgiving and the holidays and COVID, so it hasn't been good timing.
And that comment was made earlier by one of the callers as well. Their application timing is beyond our control. We have a shot clock wherein we have to respond to their application within a certain time frame, or it's considered approved.
All right. Well, I guess in final comments is just please reconsider, because you know, 103 Brown Avenue
is being reconsidered.
Yeah.
Thank you
I
for
heard
your
there
comments.
Thank you.
Next stand, please. Hello, George.
Hello. Thanks for having this meeting. It seems like with the FCC rulings, you guys are over a barrel. I know they've had a lot of success out in California, especially in Marin County, in stopping this nonsense. Let me ask Verizon, with the 5G, you're going to need new equipment. I mean, the people will need new phones, right? I mean, these phones running $1,000. So will the 5G network be able to pick up phones that are running 4G or 3G? Or is it just that maybe the 6 or 7 residents in town who go out and buy a 5G phone will be overcrowding this network? The other thing that I'm concerned about is why Lavalette? Are the other beach communities going to be getting 5G? Is Lavalette the only one? I think Seaside is maybe in the process, but what about all the way up to Point Pleasant? I mean, do they have crowded beaches too that are jamming the system? I don't understand this. You know, I've listened to the comments today, and and I really think Verizon has done a really good job of just blowing smoke. The main reason you're putting 5G in here is to probably up the power on these nodes, and hopefully use them to replace FiOS, because they don't want to put FiOS in there. And you can't tell me that one section of Verizon doesn't talk to the other section. I don't buy that. I think it's an economic decision you guys made, that it's cheaper to put 5G in and then hopefully pick up a lot of residents here and replace Optimum and maybe Dish and direct satellite for TV service. And when you do that, you're upping the RF frequency, because these frequencies have to penetrate penetrate through a house walls. So are you telling me that you're just putting this in for cell phone use only, and are not going to be contemplating using this in lieu of a FiOS-like network using the 5G? Because that's what I understand it was really developed for. And do you really expect the senior population in this town to go running out and buying 5G equipment and replacing all their equipment for thousands of dollars? So that's my 2 cents on this.
Any comments from Verizon?
Very quickly, Mr. Cross talked about other communities. I think Mr. Gidio was very clear that Verizon is deploying similar infrastructure throughout New Jersey, and particularly along the shore communities from Asbury Park down to Wildwood, including Long Beach Island and all the shore communities. With respect to the services, part of 5G is to enable all kind of services because of its low latency, because of its potential. The FCC is pushing the deployment of 5G because they know it will create a lot of new services. And so is it limited to just making a phone call? No. Even today, what does your phone do? Your phone's your navigator, it's your map, it's your internet. The services you currently enjoy on your phone, that's only going to increase over time. And 5G is a way to allow for that deployment. The last question, I believe, was answered earlier with respect to the need of 5G phone to get the 5G experience. I think that's true. I'm not sure the answer. Maybe one of the other experts can answer the question is, will the 5G node be able to pick up any of the other phones at all, 4G or 5G, or is it simply the interface between the 5G phone and the 5G antenna?
Yes. So that's correct. It's the 5G node is for 5G services, and you do require a 5G device to do that. Whether you have a modem or a hotspot or a cell phone, if it has 5G, it will be able to take advantage of that. The 4G and the 4G services also get an indirect benefit from the 5G service, because as people are using that, they're not using the 4G service, which then unloads it for the users that still have the 4G phones. As far as the price of the 5G phone, that's when it first came out, sure, they were more, but now that's becoming a standard implementation in all the phones that are on sale. Like I believe, for example, the current iPhone, it comes with 5G. It's not a special feature on the phone. It doesn't make it cost extra, and as the technology,
if I could jump in here,
it will continue to go into more and more phones. I'm sorry, go ahead.
If I could jump in here about that. Here you have you have about 80% of the full-time people here are seniors. They are not going to go out and spend $500, $600, $700, $800 for a 5G phone. It's just not going to happen out here. Then you tell me that your RF frequency is not going to be that high and not ramped up. How are you going to get the signal into a house to a receiver? You have to ramp up that signal. So people that live near these nodes are going to be constantly bombarded by higher RF frequencies, not just the guy that's walking up and down the street. That pole is going to be outside their house 24/7, 365 days a year. So you can't sit there and tell me there's not going to be any effect on people in their homes, because in order to get through that glass window that you talked about, you're going to have to ramp up that RF frequency. And that's the problem. And that's what people on the West Coast are fighting. And they're winning some cases out there.
Mr. Cross, with all due respect, Verizon did submit radio frequency studies on each of the nodes. They studied the closest home, the closest place where any person could be to demonstrate these are well within the standards.
But if you're going to put an RF receiver in the house for television, you're going to have to up that RF frequency. You're saying you're running it mid-range. You're not going to be running it mid-range once you get equipment into the homes.
As was testified earlier, the study was based on a conservative estimate, the facility operating at full power all the time with all reflection.
And most of these studies were run by the telecommunication, company.
Mr. Koss, I appreciate your comments, but, back and forth like this, I don't
I
think
know,
it's
I
serving the
understand that.
council any particular.
I understand that, but I think Verizon is doing a disservice to the people of Lavallette.
Thank you for your comments, so we appreciate that. Next hand, please.
Hi, I'm Tammy Roselli. I'm at 108 Brown Avenue, and thank you all for sharing all this good information with me. I echo a lot of the same sentiments that I've heard from my neighbors about our concerns. One of the things that I believe it was Tony who shared earlier was this location at 103 Brown, a couple doors down from me, was chosen because of the foot traffic area. And I'm a little perplexed by this because our cute little street of Brown Avenue, the foot traffic is maybe going to the beach, maybe going down to the bay for the recreation, which I don't really see the need for a lot of technology in doing these activities of the beach or the recreational areas. So that's a little perplexing. I guess there's really not a question there, but I will follow that up with, we really, really urge you to find an alternate location than in front of our homes. It's just really sad to think that this tower is going to be in front of someone's home, other homes in the area to aesthetically look at this. My other concern, I'm a leukemia survivor. I've had cancer. I've survived leukemia. I've been very in tune with the effects of electromagnetic fields for years. I'm also a realtor, so these things are really concerning to me. And having the emissions from this 5G antenna, I know that there's been a lot of research done with this, but I don't think that there's enough conclusive research that you can tell me that it's not going to affect my health or that it's not going to affect the health of my grandchildren that are going to be visiting me at my home while we're sleeping, and the restorative state of cellular repair during the night. I just would be more willing to accept this in a residential location if there was some more conclusive evidence that it's not going to affect us, that it's not going to affect our DNA. My husband also was diagnosed with cancer about 5 years ago. So it's a huge concern for us. And we just really urge you to find an alternate location than in such close proximity to our homes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Michelle. And while we sympathize with you, the problem for us as a council is it's the NIMBY problem, not in my backyard. If we move it from you, we're going to put it in front of somebody else who's going to then have exactly the same complaints. So we're in a tough spot in that we can't decide who gets it and who doesn't get it.
And we don't want anyone to have it in front of their home. We would like to find an alternate location that does not affect a home. And we sympathize with the Liggett location as well.
Thank you for your comments. Any comment from Verizon?
No, as indicated, Verizon stated that notwithstanding the fact that the location on Brown as well as the location on Liggett were conforming with your ordinance, we would work with the town to find a location that the town would think would be better. It would take a new poll at both locations, but we're willing to cooperate with the town to see if there's a location that would be preferable.
Thank you. Next hand, please. If there, we spoke with her son and not her, so let her in. That's 3.
Hi.
Barbara.
Hi. I miss you guys.
in person for the council meetings.
We
My
appreciate
main,
that. Thank
my
you.
main problem is, my main concern are babies. Unborn babies, children, their skulls are so different. I did work in neurosurgery. I know that the doctors always talked about how the babies had a different skull. They're thinner. I want to know if any of these studies, and they're very old from FCC. I mean, they're 1996. I think we had 2G then. Has any studies ever been done on babies' brains and babies' skulls and the unborn? And what are your miscarriage rates with 5G? You don't know. You don't know because the FCC not only will not accept health evaluations and environmental impact studies and health impact studies, but they actually refuse them. And I wonder, why would they refuse that if they have nothing to hide? Do you guys have kids? I mean, aren't you afraid for your own babies? And you know what? Jonathan, who was your original person 2 years ago from Verizon, I always remember him saying, this is completely different than anything we've ever had before. Oh, how is it different? Oh, well, it's a completely different millimeter wavelength that we share with that nobody's ever used before, and we share it with the military. So we started looking into this. And you know what? It sounds like pulsating microwave. And I would like to also know if you could tell me the difference between what happened to the diplomats in Cuba with the pulsating microwaves that destroyed their brain and this. What happens if this goes haywire, or if somebody's just standing there, or the pole falls and the microwaves go crazy? How is it different? Is it pulsating microwave the same thing? Is it kind of the same thing? So it's two questions: the baby's skull and pulsating microwaves. Thanks.
I think before Mr. Geddes reviews your questions, let me just state, Verizon is not the one setting these standards. The standards are set by the FCC, not based on one study or a dozen studies or 100 studies. It's literally based on thousands of studies that have been conducted ever since there's been radio. So the studies are continuing to be conducted. Verizon doesn't set the standard. Verizon is tasked to follow the standards. And what Verizon has done here is ask for an independent radio frequency engineer, Mr. Geddes' firm, to review each node to confirm that, in fact, it will comply with the standards set by the federal government.
In 1996. It's not 1996. That's why you're trying to improve everything. So why not improve those standards? Why not say, no, we can't do this. We have a big liability. I'm a Verizon stockholder. It's not like I want you guys to fail, okay? I want to know, are my dividends going to be affected by all these different claims that come in? Now, I mean, one of your lawyers said that, they have to yet prove that. But it could be proved. And you guys could actually go bankrupt.
It was just 2 years ago when the FCC determined not to change the standard based upon 5G.
Why?
And maybe Mr. Grevis, if you could just comment on that.
Yes. So the standards were reviewed a couple years ago, and they've been reviewed. They're re-reviewed periodically, and they're continually find that the standards that were set in 1996 are still applicable and still within very safe limits.
For microwave radiation, that's completely different. Your own people said this is completely different. This is different than anything you've ever known. Completely different type of millimeter waves. The microwave radiation, I wouldn't leave my microwave on. In fact, I took my microwave out of my house. This to me is like turning on a microwave and leaving it on day and night with little babies walking around. Somebody pregnant, you don't even know what could happen to that child. I mean, we're in COVID. We're supposed to be keeping ourselves healthy, and you guys are inundating our little tiny town with something that we don't need. Where's your coverage map? Do we really need this? I mean, seriously, do we? And what do people say? Oh, Yeah, 5G. We really need it for remote surgery and for driverless cars. Come on, guys. Really, I know you put in billions of dollars, but this is absolutely ridiculous in a tiny town like this. Every time we turn around, we're going to see these things there. How horrifying to do that. How absolutely horrifying. It's not Teletubbies out there. I mean, these things, I'm going to be looking and thinking, oh my God, I'm getting zapped. And I don't know how you guys can't feel that way. And be honest.
Barbara,
be
they're
really honest.
employees of Verizon, and they don't have the answers for us. So
They don't have the answers. And Mr. Grievous, I would like to say that I don't even know how we can trust you, because you have had the same sunlight come through that this entire time. So that's either a background and you're not there, or you are in a place that is constantly has the sun in the same spot. So I just had to say that. I'm sorry.
thank you for your comments, Barbara.
All right.
Next hand, please. Mr. Wilson. Do we want to allow them a second shot? Oh, they're new.
No.
They look the same.
Hi,
Hi.
Mary Ann Wilson here with my husband, Tim. We live
Did
at,
we hear from you earlier?
no,
Okay.
we're at
What, do you have an address in Lavalette?
100 Brown,
100 Brown.
Mhm. Yes.
Thank you.
And I would just like to thank everybody and for being there tonight and for trying to explain with all of us who are concerned what we can do. Tim and I have put together, as the council people know, a petition from all of the Brown residents, Brown Avenue residents. We have about 20 signatures here. We all kind of feel the same way. Aesthetics, you know, the pole that's there right now, I believe, I could be wrong, is going to be higher than what it is now. And on that side of the street, there are no poles. So having a big pole like that aesthetically is just going to be an eyesore. And Mr. Meese, thank you for reconsidering the location, the change for Brown, because we are as everybody has mentioned here already, that we are a smaller street and the homes are close together. And I don't think it would look, it just would not look well on that street. And I worry about also 10, 20 more poles coming in for the town. It's going to be Brown Avenue, then it'll be another small street, something to consider. Once you open up the box, you can't put the things back in. So I think we have to be extra cautious on how we lead this right now. So I just feel the town is a very small town. It is, maybe I'm mistaken, about a mile. I could be wrong. We're all talking about demographics. Heavy usage, I agree. Heavy usage last summer was pretty bad because you had a lot of people from all over due to COVID inundating our town. Well, that was probably a good thing and a bad thing, but you have to think about that as well. Are we going to have that type of heavy usage this summer? So you have a smaller town, approximately 1,900 people. Some are part-time residents, some are full-time. We're about a mile. You have, are we going to have COVID? I hope to God we don't have a problem this summer with that. I hope that's taken care of. But you just have to take, we're small. We're a small town. You have to take all that consideration. And also, like I mentioned, on Brown Avenue, please, I would really, a lot of the neighbors agree, please reconsider and have a different location. I'm sure there's some you can find. Thank you very much for listening to us and have a good evening.
My only comment, Mrs. Wilson, listening to the testimony today or the comments tonight from Verizon, 20 units from them, and there's at least 3 other companies that may be putting them in. That's 80.
Yeah.
We have 26 streets. That averages out to more than 3 per street in Lavalette. So I don't know how they're going to be able to accommodate everybody. Everyone's going to complain. There's no question about that. You're complaining now because it's targeting your area. It's going to be targeting mine next. There's no question about that.
I know. Then where does it end? That's the problem here.
That is the problem.
And
Thank you for your comments.
yeah, thank you.
Any other hands? All right, this time I'll close the public portion. You want to make a
I'd like
motion?
to make a motion that we meet in executive session due to the fact that this may cost money in
Litigation, yeah.
or depending what our decisions are.
You may, absolutely, absolutely. I'm sorry I neglected you there, Bob. You've been quiet as a church mouse tonight.
Mr. Meese, I just want to go over a couple things in relation to the planning board issues and make sure that we have consensus on that. As we've already talked about, just go for simplicity's sake. We've already discussed the Verizon to provide the color sample for the cabinets at all locations. We discussed that the training is good, but the meters are not at this time. The other thing, I don't remember if it was this meeting or last meeting, but Verizon will be responsible for the removal of any obsolete equipment from all these locations.
Correct.
Okay. And then as far as the two sites on Grand Central, 2000 Grand Central and 1704 Grand Central, with the Department of Transportation consent, has any development occurred on that, or are we still waiting for this approval before we approach the DOT?
We'll need to obtain the DOT consent. And we understand that would be a condition of any action.
Okay. And then just so you know, the UCC permits, they're to the point of approval. He just needs to also wait to see if anything transpires in these meetings to change the content of those applications. But as of right now, they are up to the point where they could be approved.
Okay.
Just want to check any of the other conditions right here.
Mr. Bryce, Ocean County approval on Washington Avenue?
Yeah.
Yes, as Mrs. Philippone just said, Ocean County approval for the 120 Washington, that would also be pending final.
Yes, the county won't approve until the municipality approves.
Okay.
Has the master agreement with them. So once the council acts, then it's a matter of adding this to the list of county approvals.
And then not applying to the Grand Central locations, but the other three proposed locations, you would go ahead and obtain markouts prior to any work being done at those other locations, the replacement poles.
That's right. The one call markouts for any underground utilities.
I believe that's it for the existing conditions. The only other thing I wanted to speak about was with Tony, I just wanted to confirm that we did have a conversation today about alternate locations for Liggett as well as Brown. I cannot approve those locations as we talked about preliminarily. It looks like there might be some options there, but what we would have to do is go back and have the engineer review that, submit that to the planning board because they would be new pole constructions and have it vetted in the same manner. Additionally, we would have to receive the full workup on that for the engineering drawings, the RF study, and everything along those lines. So that's just so the public is aware. It's not something that we can wave our wand tonight and go ahead and approve, but we have had alternate locations proposed. I don't know if they're a solution or they're just a bigger problem. I'll be quite honest with you as far as that goes. As the mayor said, it might be just transferring the problem as opposed to solving the problem. But we did have that discussion. So I did want to confirm that. Mrs. Philippone, do you remember any other contingents that you wanted to discuss?
No, but I have some, I have a statement I'd like to make, and one thing that I think has been answered, but not sufficiently. I'm not satisfied with the answer the way it's been presented. I'm not sure that I understand their answer exactly correctly, so I'd like to ask it in my statement. I'll point it out when I get to it. But
You're not going to make the statement now, are you?
I think I would like to, before we go to executive. My statement really focuses on the aesthetics of this. And when I hear 20 poles, I feel more strongly than ever that we have to address. I'm going to read a quote. New Jersey's coastline is a rich and diverse fabric of natural wonders and economic engines that improve our quality of life and enrich our economy. Businesses, tourists, and residents are drawn to New Jersey's coast for its many economic and recreational opportunities. Coastal land provides crucial habitat for a wealth of wildlife, including migrating birds, commercially valuable fish and shellfish, and sporting and recreational species. Yet our coastline is under threat from human activities. Hasty, uncoordinated development along the Jersey Shore has already had an impact on this fragile ecosystem. This quote is from the New Jersey DEP, Division of Land Use Regulation, and it's the center of my remarks. In the 5 applications submitted for us for consideration, it is the beauty, the serene appeal of the shore environment, the clean air, the beautiful sunrises and sunsets, and the spectacular view of both the ocean and the bay that need our attention. What impact will these nodes have on all these things that we hold so dear in Lavallette? What assurances have been offered? In my opinion, not much. And here's where my question needs to be clarified. Yeah, they gave us some shade of brown, but what shade of brown is that? And will the shade be custom colored, since it has been noted that every pole is different, sometimes displaying several shades on the same pole? What about fading of both the pole and the equipment, which is always an aesthetic concern in our environment? Are we getting custom coloring, a chip of color for each of the poles, because they're all different? And what about densification? The Coastal Protection Act, NJSA 1319-2 states, New Jersey's bays, harbors, sounds, wetlands, and intertidal areas together constitute an exceptional, unique, irreplaceable, and elegantly balanced physical, chemical, and biologically acting and interacting natural environment resource. I'm going to skip some of it. To add to this, there was a case, United Catawba Band of Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma versus the FCC. And in that case, the FCC, the court held that densification could be considered in connection with aesthetics in historic and Indian lands under the National Environment Policy Act. Well, the National Environment Policy Act, 29 USCA Chapter 4321, applies only to federal or joint federal and state projects the entire ocean front of the New Jersey shore has been recently rehabilitated in a federal Army Corps of Engineer project. Therefore, densification can be considered as an aesthetic quality that we can hold Verizon accountable for and damaging. 20 poles in a 1.25 mile community that's probably around a quarter of a mile wide. With this said, and with this court ruling, Verizon has not presented a plan to address densification. 2 years ago, when we were first approached by Verizon, they suggested 14 small cell nodes. That was followed with applications for the first 7. Those applications were denied for various reasons. They are now back in front of us with 5 relatively new applications, some new locations, and some repeats from the original 7. They were comfortable informing us at the planning board that when they finish with these 5, they will be right back with 5 more. And as of tonight, they're comfortable telling us that after those 5, they'll come back with 10 more. So we're now up to 20. How many small cell nodes does it take to destroy the aesthetic beauty of a coastal community? I was going to mention the Defense Department case, which is also relatively new. I believe that in the telecom industry's rush to launch their technology as rapidly as possible, there are too many unanswered questions, too many potential problems that have yet to be investigated. There are studies all around the world challenging the safety of the 1996 FCC regulation. There are cases in the United States that are nearing conclusion. And we're rushing to move this forward because it has to be done now. I think we have enough reason to question and perhaps deny this whole thing.
All right. Anyone else want to make a comment at this time? You want to say, but I do have a motion to adjourn to executive session. Mr. George, is that acceptable? Is that a proper motion?
Yes, it is, Your Honor. It's advertised in the agenda. You just need a second and a vote.
I'll second it.
Mayor, before we do that, I do have to read these 3 comments we received
Okay.
from online.
Okay.
As required with the COVID meeting rules, we received 4. One was from Mary Ann Greer. She actually called in and asked the same exact questions already. The next question is from Janet and Perry Piazza from 56 Pershing Avenue. We would like to understand why out all the small towns up and down the peninsula was the town of Lavallette chosen for 5G. Surely there are larger towns with more full-time residents that need this service more than the small town of Lavallette. Verizon is installing 5 poles with 5 more coming after that. How many poles do we need for the maximum benefit of 5G? Also, if another company such as AT&T wants to bring 5G, can they add a box to your poles or do they install new poles? We sincerely feel we are opening a Pandora's box by allowing these first 5 poles and would like to state that we object to this entire project. Thank you for taking the time to read this and answer. I believe every one of those questions has been answered already.
I believe they were answered, yes.
So on to the next one. To the Lavallette council members from Greg Scarcelli and Marge LaVolpe from 3 Liggett Road. They've actually also called. So it's the same statement they appeared to read before. So I will just put that out there. Then the last one is from Tammy Roselle. Did she call? Yeah. She called? Okay, then that's easy. Then I think all 3 of her questions were also posed already by her, Mayor. That completes the call-in. Just as I mentioned, Mr. Meese did provide me with 18 comments that came in from the Verizon link that was on our website for comments. He did provide me with those as well, and those were provided to all council members.
All right. If you and no one else wants to make a comment at this point, we have a motion and a second to adjourn to executive session. Can I have a roll call, please?
One last comment.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, Greg.
Well, yeah, one comment. Mr. Bryce had indicated on the Liggett Road and the Brown Avenue sites, since they do conform to the ordinance, and we are willing to, in good faith, work with the town on a possible location for a new pole that would require subsequent review by the planning board. We would ask that those 2 be approved conditionally on our good faith effort to work with you, because it may be that once we get into the field, it could be that there is not a better location. So we wouldn't want to be in this situation of having a problem with those 2 since they do conform.
Okay, we can do that. Are you going to stick around for our executive session and watch the vote afterwards?
Yes, we will.
You just remind me if I failed to mention that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. A roll call, please, on the executive session.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion is approved. comment about adjourning to executive session that we need to read now or no?
Mayor, just note for the record, I anticipate the only subject to be discussed is the pending applications for the 5 polls. No other matters to be discussed, and the minutes will be released when necessary and appropriate under the Open Public Meetings Act.
That's what I was expecting you to say. Thank you.
Could have said it yourself.
Just stay here, right? You can shut that
You
down.
better go in there.
I think we have to.
I don't know.
Mr. George, we'll be calling you on speakerphone.
Okay.
Verizon should be unmuted at this point. Verizon, is everybody that you need present?
Yes,
I
Can you
see.
hear me, gentlemen?
yes.
Okay. So we have reconvened. Oh, there's the 4th one. Very good. Okay. We have an application for approval of siting of a small cell at 2000 Grand Central Avenue. It's been before the planning board. Is there a motion for 2000 Grand Central Avenue?
Yes, I'm going to make a motion to approve, subject to the conditions that our borough attorney is going to recite now.
Mr. George, you want to read them now or after a second? Phil's not responding. Phil, can you hear us? Can anybody hear us?
Yep.
Mr. George? Wow.
I get it. There he goes. Phil, can you
Okay.
hear us?
Yeah, I can now. I'm sorry, I had to change things around because it was still not letting me unmute. I'm
All right,
sorry.
so the first application is 2000 Grand Central Avenue. I have a motion to approve that, subject to conditions. Do you want a second before you read the conditions, or you want to read them now at the motion?
No, Mayor, the motion for that 2000 Grand Central Avenue would be conditioned upon the following 2 conditions. That the applicant produces a certification from the FAA and the Department of Defense that there is no interference from these applications for any form of avionics, either military or civil. And and the second is that there be no densification beyond 20 units total.
Okay, that is the motion with the conditions. Do we have a second on the motion? They should be, right? Yeah, the planning board conditions, do we need to read them into the record?
No, they would be included as well.
Subject to the planning board conditions as well. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Pass.
Pass. Yes.
Due to a possible conflict and advice from counsel, I abstain.
I'm going to pass just to see you.
Jesus, what?
Pass.
Oh, my God.
Get back to me, I'll vote.
No. Get back to me. I have a question for Mr. George. According to our rules of voting, are you allowed to pass twice? I believe you pass once. When you come back, you vote.
I believe that you're required to vote after a first pass.
That's what I thought.
Mr. George, can I just raise an objection? These conditions are not acceptable to us. There's no way, there's no procedure for us to get those type of certifications. And nor is it proper for the borough to act on applications that aren't before it, which is what it's doing to try to limit the number of nodes to 20.
That may well be, Mr. Beast, but these are the conditions that the borough is willing to approve the applications at all.
Just want the record to note that we strenuously object to both those conditions.
Understood, counsel. Thank you.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Not me. You voted.
You voted yes already. That motion is approved. The next application is 3 Liggett Road, excuse me. Recommendation of the planning board are there as conditions as well. Can I have a motion on 3 Liggett Road?
Are we adding the other condition?
Subject to the conditions, if that's your motion, yes.
You said of the planning board, you didn't do the
Yes, they're
alternative
included.
location.
Mr. George is going to read in the.
Mr. George, upon your motion with conditions, Mr. George will read those conditions in. Is there no motion?
Oh, I'll make a motion. We approve with the conditions that Mr. George is going to read into the record and if I get a second on that.
I'll second.
The conditions would be that the planning board's conditions as set forth in their resolutions would apply. Again, the FAA and Department of Defense certification as to no interference with military or civilian avionics, no more than 20 units total. And as to 3 Liggett, that it's approved conditioned only if negotiation does not produce or result in a more favorable location as testified to by the applicant's experts. However, should the condition not be met, the original application would be granted subject to the other conditions.
Yeah, for the record, we object to the conditions of the DOT and FAA certifications, as well as the limitation on the number of total nodes.
Mayor, I don't know if any kind of comment. We're in a voting situation. I don't know if we should have a comment on each one.
Mr. George, should we note his objections at this time? Is it proper to do it now or at a later time?
We're on all the votes. You could.
If I may, Your Honor, the applicant is simply protecting the record and noting an objection. The vote is not a time to go back into a dispute or debate, but the applicant is correct in noting his objections to the specific conditions being named.
Objections so noted. Very good. A roll call, please.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Due to a possible conflict and advice of our attorney, I abstain.
Yes.
Motion is approved. The next application is 103 Brown Avenue.
I will move that with the conditions to be stated by Mr. George.
And I'll second that.
Mr. George?
For the record, Your Honor, the conditions as to the Brown Avenue application would be the same as the prior application for Liggett. The planning board conditions would apply. FAA and DOD certification as to no interference with avionics for military or civilian aircraft, no more than 20 nodes total, and that the Brown Avenue location is approved only if a more suitable location is not located as a result of negotiations as the applicant has indicated. However, should that not happen, the Brown Avenue location is approved subject to the other conditions.
Again, we object to the conditions for the record.
So noted. Roll call, please.
No.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Due to a possible conflict and advice of our attorney, I abstain.
Yes. And that motion is approved. Which was the last one I did? 102, 120 Washington?
What's our one? Yeah, 120 Washington.
That was
Yeah, well, that was the last one you did, 120 Washington.
120 Washington, next application, a motion on 120 Washington, please.
So moved with conditions to be stated by Mr. George.
I'll second that.
If I may, Mayor, members of the board, the conditions would be the conditions placed upon approval by the planning board, FAA and DOD certification that there is no interference with military or civilian avionics, no more than 20 nodes total. The application as to Liggett and Brown does not apply.
Again, we object to the conditions of FAA and DOT certification, as well as the number of nodes, as previously noted.
Objections noted. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Due to a possible conflict and advice of our attorney, I abstain.
No.
Motion is approved.
It's so ridiculous.
Okay, the final application is 1704 Grand Central Ave.
I'll move it with conditions to be read by Mr. George.
I'll second that.
Mr. George.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. The conditions are the same, subject to the conditions placed upon by the planning board's conditional approval, subject to FAA and DOD certification that there is no interference with avionics for military and civilian use, and no more densification, no more than 20 units total. The condition as to Liggett and Brown does not apply to this application.
Again, we object for the record to the conditions of FAA and DOT certification, as well as the total number of nodes. And just a clarification, if I would, with respect to the planning board conditions, there was the request for the RF meters. And again, we've indicated we can't comply with that condition, but we would train the employees. I don't know if that was meant to be included or not.
Was that included on a planning board?
I believe it was one of the conditions placed upon it by the planning board.
Yeah.
I would note however, there were more than 2 applications for the planning board where locations were recommended. This council is adopting that condition only as to Liggett and Brown.
Do we need to address the radio frequency meter issue that we haven't addressed on all previous 4? It was a condition of the planning board and how do we deal with that?
Well, it was a condition of the planning board. The applicant has indicated that they're unable to supply them, but they would, as an alternative, would train the borough's employees how to turn the installations on and off when they are using them. My opinion at this point is that the planning board's condition should stand. However, if the applicant shows that in fact they can't supply the meters, because I took some of the testimony to mean it's just too much for us to do it, and yet I seem to also hear that we are simply unable to supply such. So subject to that clarification, I would leave it in, subject to future clarification. It may well be the applicant is correct and it can't be done.
Okay. All right. It's in there as of now, but you'll supply us proof that you can't do that, and that should satisfy that condition. We have a motion and a second on the floor. A roll call, please.
No.
No. Yes.
Yes.
Due to a possible conflict and advice of our attorney, I abstain.
Yes.
And that motion is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. I guess you can exit the meeting and we'll continue to conduct the balance of our council meeting. Have a little more business to take care of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Have a nice evening.
Good night.
Okay, moving on. Second public hearing of the CDBG grant application. Anita, you want to explain what your grant application was?
Put your mic on. Put your mic on.
If you can remember from last time, we are getting, this year is the CDBG grant, and we can go only for something to help the handicapped. We didn't in the past, but this year we're back to no DTN, so we have to go for the handicapped. You notice in the newspaper, they did a great job of right on the front page of Ocean Star, that Lavalette beachfront improvements, saying that we're making our beach accessible. And I think we have the matrix there. Now we're going to be looking for a mat that will go from the boardwalk around all the way down to the sand, which will make it easier for people to walk, easier for wheelchairs and whatever. So that's what we're looking for. It's $50,000. And I don't know, should we mention about the down payment? Mr. Bryce? No, yes? Anyway, it's a $50,000.
We can mention that next meeting. I actually have some communications with the county.
Okay.
About this. I would recommend also just putting
Put that
up to $50,000 would probably be a better.
Okay. We will look for $50,000. I have spoken with the person that's in charge of the Moby mats. I've spoken with our engineer, Chuck Applegate, and they are working together to get this grant together. And it has to be in the second week in February. So I'm hoping that you will agree with that. And I did speak with Ted about the good parts of it, and I've seen it in action. And we're looking for the certain golden sand so it would match the sand color.
So we need a motion and a second and a vote to approve your plan.
Yes.
I'll make that motion there.
I'll second it.
This is just to apply for the.
CDBG grant,
To apply
yes.
for it, yes.
Standard application process. You have to identify what you intend to use.
And would we need monies above and beyond that?
What do you mean?
Say we got $50,000 for the.
How much
is the total
50,000.
cost? How much would we need?
No, nothing.
Nothing.
The only time you'd have to pay something is if we don't get the full 50.
If we don't get it, but
Say
we
you
will.
say you get 43.
Yeah.
If you still want to get the mat, you might have to come up with 7.
If I could, just to clarify that, the total price is going to be 46,000 and change. I'm sorry, 47,000 and change.
Okay.
We have an existing 6,000 and change that we can put down as a down payment. We're going to propose that next meeting. However, they'll bring the final price down to about 41,000.
Yeah.
The maximum for the CDBG may be 35,000. So they'd have to go and see if there's any extra funds on top of that, but the maximum may be up to 35,000. So we may see an exposure between that 41,000 and that 35,000. So it could be an exposure. We would have to come up with like 6,000, but we're getting, a good majority of it covered. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that the award date, as far as being able to actually procure with that money, could be August to September. So I don't know if the final procurement would be able to be made this summer. I just want to clarify that right up front.
And sometimes when we had this deal, get money in July, we went ahead and purchased what we wanted to buy with the grant, and then we paid for the grant. We paid that money back when we got the grant. That's happened often because it.
Yeah, one difference is just some of the projects you talked about aren't as substantial an amount as what we're talking about now. Like they were, I think what you're talking about is probably a couple thousand. It wasn't necessarily 40,000. Was it 40,000 or no? Okay. Because we would have to find that money, and then that's a whole other thing.
So okay. Public comment. Anyone wishing to comment on the CDBG application for funds to put the Moby mat or on the President Avenue handicap ramp over the dune? No hands. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 That motion
We'll get it,
approved.
and we'll get it, and we'll
We're
get
gonna
it.
keep this meeting moving. We are on old business.
Yes.
Anybody have old business that they want to discuss tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. Just to, for the beach badge, the order form for the beach badges will be on the website on February 15th. It can be mailed into the borough at that time. The orders will be filled and a date when they will be available for pickup will be announced at a later date.
And they'll be picked up at the baseball field again, or probably
Most
not?
like, we're gonna see. We're
Okay.
gonna see where we are and
Mm.
see where they're gonna be picked up.
Okay, no heat over there, so.
Well, exactly. We'll see where we are and such, but the order form will be out on the borough website on February 15th.
Thank you. Any other old business? Keeping it moving, new business. Mr. Price, did you have old business?
I did not, sir.
New business. I have one bit of new business. A letter from the Lavalette Yacht Club asked to read into the record. As you are aware, Swan Point Road is a private roadway that is owned by the Lavalette Yacht Club. In order to maintain this status, it is necessary to close the road for one day of the year. This is to inform you that Swan Point Road will officially be closed for all access on Super Bowl Sunday from 9 a.m. through February 7th, 2021. That is 9 a.m. Sunday, February 7th, 2021 until 9 a.m. Monday, February 8th, 2021. Our members have been informed of the closure on that date. A letter has also been sent to the Lavalette Police Department, the Lavalette Fire Department, and the Lavalette Department of Public Works regarding the road closure. We would appreciate your cooperation and trust that this will not be an inconvenience to the borough. Any other new business? On to comments from the public. Any hands?
Oh, they all went to sleep.
We'll come back to them then. Council comments. Jim, Joanne, Dave, Michael, Bob, Mr. Bryce, Anita.
I just want to mention that I am still looking for money for pickleball, because I know you're working on it. I'm still looking for money for that. And also, maybe you didn't read this, but Mayor Sabasic, our mayor up here in Point Pleasant, he won the state elected official of the year. They pick one every year. They usually have this big thing at the convention, but of course we didn't have that.
No,
But Mayor Sabasic, Bob Sabasic. Okay.
nobody nominated me.
I would if I didn't know.
All right, is that it, Anita? Okay, I have no further comments for tonight's meeting. Appreciate it. It was long. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Motion to adjourn, please.
So
Oh,
moved.
excuse me, I have to ask-
Hold on,
I have to
retracted.
ask to please excuse me for the next 2 meetings.
Oh, motion to excuse Anita.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You're excused. Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Do we even switch the flag?